they were prepping me, and then they took me into the OR, and we delivered my 3 babies.
Welcome back to the best part of the day. I'm Kay.
And I'm Kyr.
And we did a little switch up there.
And we appreciate all the support for our podcasts. Like and subscribe just so you can get all of the updates on when we drop our pods.
Okay, well, should we get into this episode? Because I'm excited to hear all about your birth story.
Me too. I guess so. What do you want to know, or where should we start?
We should start with how you were in the hospital, right? Like kind of the week leading up to it.
So I feel like for me, with being pregnant with triplets, my birth plan went out the window the moment we found out we were having triplets, because it's so hard to know what's going to happen once the delivery day happens when you're pregnant with 3. And so the where, when, and how of delivering is just like the only priority on my birth plan was to deliver 3 hopefully healthy babies.
Because you can't even like plan on a due date because they come so early.
Exactly. And so I have a couple of friends that are pregnant right now, and they're talking about whether they want to have a home birth or a hospital birth or epidural or no epidural. And it's like those things I didn't get to think about, which it's fine because my babies are healthy, but it's something that I was like, oh, I kind of wish I at least got to choose it, or at least think about it for a second. So that's probably the biggest difference pregnancy wise, is that you just don't know what's going to happen during delivery with triplets.
Yeah, and that's got to be really tough because I'm a planner, so I would love to just have everything planned out.
Yep.
But with 3, it's so hard to know.
Right. And so leading up to the pregnancy, I would watch C-section procedures on YouTube just so I could like visualize it and prepare, and like I felt like I was in control of something at that point. And I knew they were probably going to be in the NICU too. So those are 2 things that I knew 90% that it was going to be a C-section, and they were going to be in the NICU. And that's kind of how I prepared.
Which is all you can do. And it's great that you even like looked up those C-section videos.
Yeah.
Because some people may just be like, oh, like this is my fate. This is what has been chosen for me, basically. Right. And I'll go with the flow, which is fine. But it's also nice to be prepared in that sense.
Right. And I think preparing for at least NICU time it was huge for me. So when it actually happened, it wasn't like a shock to the system, or I was still sad I wasn't able to hold him right after the delivery, but I knew that was not going to be a thing.
Right. Both my pregnancies ended up with my babies in the NICU too, and it's so hard not to have that moment with them right when they're born.
Oh yeah. And when I was pregnant with them, I would like feel so sad that I wasn't going to have that moment. But
I know. I wish I kind of was able to prepare for that, because it's so hard when you think that's going to be the way it is, and then it gets taken away from you. So it's kind of, I guess, nice in a sense for you to be prepared for that.
No, definitely. I guess we'll get down to it. So I was 30 weeks and some change. I think it was 30 weeks and 4 days that I was starting to have contractions. I had Braxton Hicks contractions pretty much starting at 23 weeks of my pregnancy with the triplets.
Okay.
So I was contracting very early on, and they weren't painful or anything, and they were pretty irregular. I ended up going to the hospital once, like at 25 weeks, just to get them checked out, because I think they were more frequent, and it was my first pregnancy and I was nervous. So I just went in, and that's when we did the registry, or like registering to a hospital and everything.
I want to know how many pregnant women go in during their first pregnancy for Braxton Hicks, because that was me. Like I was so scared when they started coming on, and I'm like, oh wait, this is normal.
Yes. I have a coworker that's pregnant right now, and she's complaining she was having some painful cramping. She ended up getting them checked out. She's totally fine. But I was like, I wonder if you're having Braxton Hicks. And I feel like people don't expect it to happen so early, because she's really early too. So I don't know. It's just something that it freaked me out when I was having them.
I know. I'm sure it's more common than we think.
Yeah, definitely. So that was fine at 25 weeks. And then 30 weeks, I was having more than 10 contractions in an hour. So my provider told me if it was more than 10 to just go and get it checked out. He said, you'd rather get it checked out and have it be nothing than, not go at all. So mom was with me and Dane was in Florida for training. He had just gotten a job with an airline. And so he had to do a 4-week training out in Florida. So he was not there. Mom was with me.
How nervous did that make you feel?
Okay, nervous, but I went into the hospital thinking it would be the same as at 25 weeks. So I was with mom and I was telling her this whole time, I was like, they're not even going to put an IV in me. They're going to monitor my contractions and then we'll go home. But I just need the peace of mind that we're okay. And I think mom was sitting there and she was like, I don't know about this.
I'm sure that's how she felt when I went to the hospital for the twins' birth.
Probably.
Like, she probably knows way more than we do. And she's like, you're having these babies soon.
Yes. I feel like moms know.
Yes.
Anyway, so I get to the emergency room. They triage me to labor and delivery. They immediately put an IV in me, which was new from the 25-week visit. They start me on some fluids and they immediately start me on steroids for the baby's lung development. So I get my first round of the betamethasone, I believe it is, of steroids, and that's two different shots. So I got the first shot right when I got there, and then they were going to keep me and do the second one either while I was admitted or before I went home.
Don't you have to wait like 12 hours for that? Okay.
Mm-hmm. They usually give them about 12 hours apart. So that was like the thing that my doctor used, I think, to be like, okay, you're staying overnight here.
Gotcha.
Because the doctor in the ER that was triaging me, he told me that I could go home. The nurse came in and said, you're fine. You're not in labor or anything. You can go home. And then the doctor called my provider and my provider said, no, you have to keep her there. I don't think she'll come back if you send her home.
That is so funny.
Yes.
He must have known you were a nurse.
Yes. Well, and he knew because at the time I was going to school for family nurse practitioner. I was in the family nurse practitioner program. Right. And he knew. And so I had just finished my last clinical of the semester on the Wednesday and I was in on that Friday. So he was like, you're done with school. You're done with clinical for the semester. You're staying. And that was really devastating.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine. But good on your doctor for like actually keeping you there, because I know, knowing you probably wouldn't have come back either.
Right. No, I agree. Even though I was bummed because I thought, I can just sit on the couch at home while I'm in the hospital.
Yeah, let me just do this bed rest thing on the couch in my bed where it's more comfortable.
Exactly. Anyway, I was also started on indomethacin, which is a tocolytic, but it's also an NSAID, so like ibuprofen and Motrin, but it can help prevent preterm labor contractions. Once I was staying overnight, they put me on an IV magnesium drip.
Which was the death of you, right?
It was. There is not much worse than a mag drip. And
okay, tell us why.
It's hard to explain, but when you're on the magnesium, your levels go so high. It's a medication that they monitor. They check your blood every couple of hours to just make sure that everything's okay, which is interesting because as a nurse, if a patient came in with a magnesium level of those numbers, we'd be concerned. Right. But I was put on this medication to help the baby's neuro protection, pretty much to protect the baby's brains, to prevent things like cerebral palsy or brain disorders.
Got it.
It just makes you feel like you have the flu. It makes you feel tired. It makes you feel like you have brain fog. Like
all while you're 30 weeks pregnant with triplets.
Yeah, right. Like you just feel terrible while you're on it. You just feel like you can't think. Like you can't even form a thought while you're on this magnesium drip.
How long were you on for it?
I believe it was a full 24 hours for the first time.
Okay.
But you can't walk because you're a fall risk. They put a Foley in, so you don't even go to the bathroom.
So you're like trapped to your bed, basically.
Yes. And it made me like my mouth was so dry. I was pounding water. I was doing the ice chips. Like it wasn't a fun experience.
Yeah, that sounds miserable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all happened the first 24 hours. I'm
Okay.
glad mom was with us because she
Yeah.
took care of Misty, our dog, and she
Your
was
fur
really
baby before you had your babies.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was really lucky that she was here with me while this was all happening. But it was also during kind of the tail end of COVID too. So we were all still wearing masks, and I could only have one visitor in the room at the time, I believe. And
Oh,
there's
okay.
only like two token visitors. So,
That could come and go regularly.
right. It was hard, but that's just how it was at the time.
So you're put on magnesium drip for a day. Then what happens?
The next morning rolls around. I got my second steroid shot, and that morning I'm feeling pretty good. Other than being on the mag drip,
Were you kind of thinking that maybe they'd send you home after that?
I was
Okay.
because you know I slept well throughout
Yeah.
the night. So that morning my provider comes in, and I tell him that I want to go home and that
You're feeling
I'm
great.
feeling perfect. He looks at me. It was him and one other provider, and they said, "Your contractions are 2 to 4 minutes apart right now,"
You're
and
kidding.
they had been for the past couple of hours that morning. And
Were you feeling them?
no, I wasn't. And so I wish someone had
Wow.
told me that so I didn't like seem like
Why?
someone who was trying to go home when their contractions were 2 to 4 minutes apart.
You're like, yeah, I'm great.
I know, I
Push it.
was shocked. Like, I did not realize they had, been that close together.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. It was kind of a hard no for that day. My provider wanted to do an FFN test. So it stands for fetal fibronectin test. I could try to explain it, but long story short, fetal fibronectin is a protein found in your amniotic sac, I believe. And so
Right.
if there is that protein in your vaginal fluid, that means delivery is likely.
In the near future.
Yes. My provider said within 2 weeks. So he said, let's do this test. If it's negative, you can go home. And then if it's positive, you're staying because you're probably going to deliver or you might deliver in the next 2 weeks.
Which would be worst case scenario, thinking you're going to
Exactly.
be there in the bed for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. But I was fine with this plan because they had done this test at the 25-week mark and it came back negative.
Oh. So you're like, it's not going to be positive.
Yes. I was like, I've done this one before.
I got
And they
this.
sent me home. They do the test. I think it took another 24 hours for them to get the results. I was also on vaginal progesterone because I had a shortened cervix.
Which I didn't know
Yeah.
until recently.
Really?
Because you asked like one of what my maternal fetal medicine appointments,
Yeah.
if I had a shortened cervix.
Really?
And I never did. They never mentioned it. And I was shocked to find out
Hmm.
that that was something you had with your three.
Yeah.
So it's
It,
interesting.
it is. You'd think we'd have that in common,
Similar
maybe.
anatomy,
I know.
like when having babies.
Yeah.
Especially
Our
both
DNA is
multiple.
the same.
Yeah.
So why not our uteruses?
And cervix.
But yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even really know that was something that people had when they were
Yeah.
pregnant, but they found mine really early. So I had been on the progesterone for maybe at least 10 weeks before that. Yeah, and it was not short enough where they didn't need to do the cerclage where they
Right.
sewed me up or anything. So that luckily didn't play a factor into the delivery.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One less thing to worry about.
Exactly. But when I found out I had a shortened cervix, I was nervous.
Yeah. It's
With three
definitely can cause
babies.
an issue
Right.
with the delivery and
Yeah,
having
and
three.
preterm delivery.
Right.
Yeah. So luckily that didn't have anything to do with it.
That's awesome.
So they did the test. Dane is actually with me. So I called him. I think he had one more day of training and then he
Okay.
came out.
That's lucky.
Yeah. And so the FFN test came back positive. Dane was here with me. Yeah. I know. And so that was nerve-wracking too. Nerve-wracking and exciting because when you're that far along, I felt
Ready to have them.
ready. Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't want to have them, but I felt
Right.
pretty big and pretty ready to
Uncomfortable,
deliver.
I'm
Mhm.
sure.
Pretty much they told me that I was going to be in the hospital for the foreseeable future.
Wow.
I know.
And how long did you think you would be in there for? For 2 weeks? Is that kind of the mindset you had?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Just because when my doctor said that within 2 weeks I had a high chance of delivering, that's when I thought,
Right. Yeah.
max I would be there for 2 weeks. 32 weeks is pretty average for a triplet delivery.
So it's kind of like your goal.
Yes, yeah. So 35 weeks was our goal.
Okay.
Once I was in the hospital, each week was, we were just hoping to make it another week. And then
Yeah.
32 was
Another
kind
test.
of the goal. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. But my provider said he would deliver us at 35 weeks if I went that far.
Okay.
We hung out for the next couple of days, and then Dane ended up going back to training.
How did that make you feel?
Nervous. But
Yeah.
I told Dane, so here's the thing. Dane needed this job for us to come back to Vegas so that we could
Gotcha.
be near family. I told him that if we got this job and he had to do training while I needed to deliver or need to be in the hospital, he could go do it because we got back to family. So that was kind of the deal I made with him. Obviously, I was sad that he was in training, he couldn't be there with me, but I was happy that we were not across the country by ourselves.
Right. I guess you could consider that kind of part of your birth plan because it's
True.
a big thing to talk about, like
Mm-hmm.
not having your significant other there for the delivery when
Right.
you've got a new job on the line
Yes.
while starting a family. Like that's a lot.
It is. It's so much. And okay, and I do have to say that the airline that he was training with were so good about him coming back in the middle of training because usually it's a pretty intensive 4 to 6 weeks, I think. I don't know exactly how long the training is.
Wow.
But usually it's like you have to be there. You can come back on certain days throughout the week, but those days are unknown. So pretty much you have to keep weeks available to be in training. But when they found out I was in the hospital, they were so good at letting Dane, come
Awesome.
back when he did. And then when he went back after he had been here for a while, they were just like, just keep us updated. If you need to go, it's fine. So that made me, I felt reassured that he would be
Yeah.
there for the delivery.
Yeah, that's so reassuring to
Yeah.
know that the airline's got his back being
Yes.
so new. That's
Right.
great.
Like he would have a job even though he may need to leave in the middle of training was
Right.
what I needed to hear.
Yeah. That's a big blessing.
Yeah. So what was that? I was in there for 10 days total.
Okay.
So I was
Trying to
binging.
pass the time.
Yeah. I know. I was binging shows. I was actually finishing up the semester. So the online schoolwork. I wrote a paper and I think that was the last assignment that I had. So finishing up schoolwork and then I binged Real Housewives of the OC,
Love
Mamma
it.
Mia, Harry Potter, all the things. I was just passing the time.
And that was for 10 days, you said.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I believe it was April 8th was the day I went in. I was 30 weeks and 4 days pregnant.
Okay.
And then I delivered on April 19th. So
Gotcha. At
just about 10.
and
I
6 days?
was 31 and 6 days. So just shy of 32 weeks.
Almost made it.
I know. I was almost average.
Who
But
wants to be
no.
average, though?
Yeah. Those days were long. I was on continuous fetal monitoring for the first 3 or 4 days. So
And
I
they're
was
uncomfortable.
They are, and you have to be still, and nurses are
Mhm.
coming in all the time and trying to readjust to make sure they're on the monitor.
Most of the time, alarms are just going off 24/7 because
Yes.
they're moving around, and if
Mhm.
you move around,
Oh, yeah.
it's gonna alarm.
No. Yeah, those first few days were very uncomfortable, just being hooked up to everything and the unknown. So once I got past the first week, I was just kind of cruising.
Yeah.
I was not having contractions as frequently. They did put me on another medication called Procardia, which helped prevent contractions. So yeah, I was feeling good and just kind of waiting for the babies to come.
Did you think you could at all go home when you were doing so well, or were you just in the mindset that you were gonna stay there until you had the babies?
I was hoping that maybe I could go home.
Yeah, because that'd be kind of hard not knowing. Like, what
Mhm.
if it's more than 2 weeks? What if it's 3 or 4 weeks?
Right.
And you're doing so well that it's like, playing tricks with your mind, I feel like.
Right. And it did come to a point. I think after the first week, we had those discussions with my provider. He never gave me a definitive answer because I think he knew they would come early. There were talks if everything was just going to stay the same and there were no real changes, there were going to be talks of me going home and just being on pretty much bed rest.
But they
Yes,
decided to come.
they did.
So, leading up to their birth or delivery, how
Yes.
did things go from not contracting, everything smooth sailing to, okay, we're having these babies?
Yes. So the night before I delivered, April 18th, it was like at 10 p.m. at night, my blood pressure was elevated. My blood pressure usually is pretty low, even pregnant. I was in the 110s, 120s, over
Oh,
70s or
okay.
80s. And I think it was in the 140s. It was like 140s over 110, I want to say, which
Yeah,
is
that's pretty
which is
high.
high for me.
Yeah.
So my nurse, checked it again and then she called my doctor and we had labs drawn, which we found that there was protein in my urine, which is a pretty big sign that I had preeclampsia. And I had swelling. My legs and my feet were so swollen, probably days before my blood pressure even got elevated, which is another sign that I had preeclampsia.
It's a problem because it could cause issues for you and the babies if not taken care of.
Yes. So pretty much the only treatment for this is delivery. And the reason for that is because if preeclampsia is not treated, it could
Cause
turn
seizures.
into seizures. Yep.
Right.
And then we've got a whole other set of issues, both for me and the babies. The doctor called me. I was on the phone with him like at 10:30 and he said, "Call Dane and tell him to get on the next flight because we're going to have these babies tomorrow."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which was nice
And
of him to give me the heads up
right.
to tell Dane.
So this happened at 10 p.m. you said,
Yeah.
which is midnight over in
No, it
Florida
was
or
1 AM.
1 a.m. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're in Vegas. There's a
Yes.
3-hour time difference.
Yeah.
I want to know what Dane's reaction was because
Yeah.
I would have been like, "Are you having them right now?"
Right.
Basically.
No, and I think because I called him at 1:30, thankfully he answered. I think he
Yeah.
was on high alert for his alarms because he had to be up for training.
Oh, gotcha.
But thankfully he did answer
Yeah.
because 1:30 is not
Yeah.
early or late.
Yeah. But he still needed time to book a flight,
Right.
it couldn't have just happened the next morning.
Yeah. And so that was the biggest thing. And all of his instructors were sleeping. So there wasn't anyone he could notify that he was leaving
Oh,
training.
kind of get the approval or okay.
Exactly. So pretty much he sent an email saying that he's got a flight and hopefully there's a spot for him back when he comes back to training.
Wow, what a leap of faith.
I know. Luckily it turned out fine, but
Right.
he got on the next flight. I think it was a 6 a.m. flight for him and he was back in Vegas at 9 a.m. ready to have these babies.
And what time were they born?
They were born at 1. The first one was born at 1:25 p.m.
Okay.
Yep. So the doctor came and ultrasound me for the last time just to figure out positioning of babies before he did the C-section. Oh, I was put on another mag drip.
Oh, no.
I know. And the second time was worse because I knew what was going to happen.
Right, and right before delivery, so
Yes.
you're feeling awful while having your beautiful babies.
Right. I was out of it. Dane was tired, running on a couple hours of sleep,
Yeah.
but
Why did they put you on it again?
I was put on it again to protect me this time. So the first time was to protect the babies.
Okay.
The second time was to protect me to prevent seizures from happening.
Gotcha, because of preeclampsia.
Yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. So, you can't fight that if it's going to help save your life potentially.
Yeah.
You're just going to suck it up and do it.
Right.
So I was on the mag drip. They were prepping me and then they took me into the OR and we delivered my 3 babies.
I love that. And what was your experience? What was your C-section experience like?
Yeah. As far as C-sections go, I mean, I don't know what to compare it to,
Right.
but it was really nice. There was one nurse that I got close with while I was in the hospital, and she wrote her number on my whiteboard and said, if you're going to deliver these babies, text me and I'll try to be there for it. And so,
That's so cute.
yeah, I loved her. She wasn't on shift the day I delivered, but I texted her that morning and said, hey, I'm having these babies. Do you want to be my nurse? And she came in for the delivery.
Okay, I love healthcare workers like that.
Me
All
too.
nurses, all techs, anyone who goes out of their way to make you feel that important
Yes.
should get an award.
I
Like
know.
that is everything.
It really was. It meant the world. There were two nurses actually that I got really close with, but one had a different assignment that day, but she was there supporting me, and then I had
Oh my
my nurse there.
gosh. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah,
And I love
so
that because isn't this week like Nurse Appreciation Week too? So
yes.
shout out to all our nurses and healthcare workers, but especially nurses. This one goes
Yeah.
out to you guys.
Seriously. No, nurses are amazing. I could do a whole podcast on them, but
So true.
yeah, I had a great experience. The spinal didn't hurt at all.
Were you feeling any of these contractions or pains leading up to it? Or
Mm-mm.
I guess you didn't
No.
have any of them.
Yeah, so my contractions had slowed down. So I
Okay,
wasn't having preterm labor. My blood pressure was just high.
gotcha.
Yep.
So do they have to induce you at all with the C-section, or is it just
No.
we're gonna go in and snatch them out of you and then it's over with?
Yeah, so there are medications I think that help
Help your uterus probably know what's
contract.
going on.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I can't tell you. I don't know what medications they gave me.
Right.
But I had probably almost everything that
Yeah.
you could ask for
Yeah.
or need in a delivery.
Talk about not having a birth plan
Yes,
because you had everything under the sun.
right. I know. If I were to go in there and say nothing, please, it
Right.
would probably have been a different story.
Yeah. They would have looked at you and been like, you're joking, right?
Right. And that's why I went in there, with very little expectations other than to have a safe and healthy
Right.
delivery.
Right. That's all we want. All we can
Right.
ask for is to have 3 healthy babies at the end of this.
Exactly. So yeah, Polly was delivered first at 1:25, and then it took a minute later to get Baskin out. He was born at 1:26 p.m. and then James was born at 1:28 p.m. So
That's
between
amazing.
Polly and James, it was 3 minutes. It was really quick.
Wow.
Mhm.
The time between my twins are 3 minutes,
Yeah, I
which
know.
is crazy that they were able to get 3 out in that time
Yes.
versus my 2.
Seriously, it all happened so quick. I think from the moment I went in there and they started the clock to being sewn up, it was like 50 minutes or something.
Wow.
It was a fast delivery.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how fast it was too. Like
Yeah,
from start to finish, you're like, I
it's
guess I
not
just thought
long.
it would be longer. Yeah.
I know.
Were you able to see any of it? Like, did they have a clear drape? Were you able to
No.
see? No, nothing.
So no, I was
Was that
not
a
able to
preference?
see. No. And I
Okay.
wish I would have asked for a clear drape because I think I
Yeah.
would have wanted to watch it all.
Yeah.
That's one thing I figured out afterwards, and maybe my hospital didn't even have a clear drape for them to put up, but they put a blue drape up in front of me, so I couldn't see anything. Once the kids were delivered, they brought them over the drape, or they pushed the drape down so that I
Right.
could see
Okay.
them. Yeah, I didn't see any of it. Dane recorded it all. I watched it afterwards.
How soon after did you watch it? Because I still haven't watched mine. Matt recorded the whole thing.
Yeah,
I've seen bits and pieces, but I haven't watched the whole thing yet.
I think I watched it the day after or 2 days after maybe.
Really?
Yeah. It's hard to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I haven't watched all of mine yet is I just want to feel like my body is healed from the trauma of it all
Understandable.
before I watch it.
Yeah.
Because I want to be in a good headspace and not feel like myself again because it takes a long time to do
Right.
that after having kids,
Mhm.
but at least just be in a good headspace to watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Understandably.
But you're brave for watching it the day
Yeah.
after.
I think I just wanted to see. I think I wanted to visualize since I didn't get to see any of it.
Yeah.
And really didn't get to spend very much time with the kids afterwards. I
Right.
just wanted to feel like I was there. Even I
Yeah.
know I was there, but I
Yeah.
just wasn't in the headspace. Like I said, I was on the mag drip and
That's true.
I wasn't present. Like I wasn't fully present, I don't think.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how did you feel afterwards? Pretty terrible still?
Yeah, pretty terrible. I got really sick right afterwards,
Mm.
which was
The
tough.
icky throw up sick, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like the trying not to vomit sick, which at the time I was just scared that my stitches was gonna pop out because it was like
Oh.
minutes after he had finished sewing me up that I was throwing up.
I cannot imagine throwing up right after being sewn up.
Yeah, it was
Like,
tough.
even sneezing right now, and it's been
Mhm.
4 weeks. I'm like, "Did I
Yes.
mess anything up?"
Right. I know, and that's what I was, like, splinting, and I was, like,
Oh.
trying just, like, to protect
Yeah.
everything down there.
Yeah. But, once you throw up, it makes you feel so much better, so
I know. But it was funny because after they had cleaned me up and everything, I went back to my room, and then they rolled me to antepartum, or
Okay.
postpartum. On the way there, they had me ring a bell, that the kids were born. Dane had gone with the kids to the NICU, so he
Okay.
wasn't there for the cleanup because he was dealing with everything in the NICU.
Did he stay with you the whole time they were sewing you up?
He left probably 5 minutes.
Okay. So did Matt.
I was still in the OR when he left.
Yeah. So did Matt.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty normal. I wanted him to
Yeah.
go to the kids, and there was nothing
Yeah.
for him to see,
Right.
anymore.
Right. That's how I felt too.
Yeah. So he left, Polly left, Baz left, and then he left with James to the NICU. So when they were
Mhm.
reeling me out, I was pressing the button that I just had a kid, the bell, and
Yay.
I did the first 2, and then everyone was like, "Wait, we gotta wait for Dane to be there." And I had my mask on, and I was like trying everything in me to not throw up in the middle
Oh.
of the unit right now because you're like exposed and in the unit, like,
And everyone's watching
yes.
you.
Yes,
Yes.
all the nurses are there, everyone's rooting for you, and I couldn't even speak because if I spoke,
Wow.
there was gonna be throw up on the bed and on myself.
I remember this one moment in second grade where I had the same thing. We were getting off the bus to go into the school.
Mhm.
In the bus, I had to keep my mouth shut
Yeah.
because I knew throw up was coming.
Yes.
And as soon as I got off the bus, I ran into the cafeteria and threw it up in the trash
Yeah,
can.
and
It's
that's
the
the
worst feeling in the
worst.
world.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you don't wanna ever feel that feeling.
No.
And so, like, I felt awkward because I wasn't saying anything, and I was, like, wanting to get this process moving, and I couldn't
No.
ask where Dane was because if I asked, there would be throw up.
That sounds
It was
miserable.
just miserable and chaotic, but Dane got there quickly. We did the last bell together, and then
You threw up, right?
yeah, I threw up.
Yeah. I remember the video and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, no."
I know. Good times.
Yes. So Dana's back with you. Kids are in the NICU.
Yes.
Doing good? How are they doing?
Yeah, they're doing good. So he didn't really have a status because they were
Okay.
still hooking them up to everything and
Probably
just
putting IVs in them,
yep.
doing all the things.
Yeah, getting the oxygen.
Mhm.
I fell asleep pretty quickly after delivery, after being
Yeah.
moved in the new room, just because I think my body was just done.
Almost like even in shock or like that adrenaline, at least for
Yeah.
me, like the adrenaline feeling
Mhm.
of going, going, going all day. And then once they sew you up, once you're back in that room, you're exhausted. Like you are
Right.
physically like and mentally not there anymore.
1,000%. Brought me back to the postpartum room, and then I asked Dane because I kind of prepared for worst case scenario
Yeah.
for the kids. So I was prepared for them to be on ventilators and just needing all of the medical assistance. I think they were on a CPAP and maybe nasal cannula, but they were fine, and I was so thankful that they didn't need any
Surgeries or
life-saving.
yeah.
So they were good, and I think that made me felt reassured
Yeah.
to where I could fall asleep for a little
Yes,
bit.
and relax. Yeah, so they're in the NICU. You are finally getting a break. How
Yeah.
long before you were able to go see them or even hold them? I'm sure it took a little bit longer to be able to hold them, but how long after
Yeah.
were you able to see them?
So because I was on the mag drip, my provider wanted me to be on that for 12 hours after delivery,
Okay.
just to make sure I wasn't going to have any seizures. So that brought us to 2 a.m. It was about 12 hours that I had to wait to go see him.
Really?
Yeah, and that was hard because I wanted it to be sooner. Like
Yeah.
I thought it would be sooner.
Yeah. What a bummer.
I had to wait the full 12 hours, but right at 2 a.m. my nurse came in, unhooked me, took the Foley out, and I went and saw them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm shocked, I guess, is
Yeah.
because I surprised you that night coming to
Yes.
see you after you had the babies. And
Yes.
I didn't realize you hadn't seen them when
Yeah.
I came and saw you, which was like around 9 or 10 p.m. that night.
Yeah. No, I hadn't been down
Yeah,
yet.
I didn't know that. It makes me sad.
I know. It really is the sad part
Yeah.
about the delivery. I was truly exhausted though.
Right.
So at the time it didn't feel as devastating
Right.
as it sounds.
Yes.
If
Hindsight,
that
you
makes sense.
probably needed that rest and time to let your body heal.
Right.
Even if it was
Because
a
I
few hours.
remember I remember you surprising me and I feel like I wasn't even coherent when you came into the room.
Guys, picture this. I jumped on a plane that day. It was the last day of my clinicals. I'd finished around, let's see. I think I left early. I think I left around noon.
Uh-huh.
My tech knew that you were having your triplets that day, and she let me go, like have a half day because I was like, I need to be there. Even if I'm not going
Yeah.
to be there for her delivery, which I knew, I
Right.
said, I need to be there while she's having this big moment.
Yeah.
So she let
Just
me
to
go.
support.
Yes, just as a support.
I know, agreed.
So this whole time, my mom is there with you. I didn't
Yes.
tell her that I was coming. I didn't tell you I was coming. I didn't tell Dana I was
No.
coming. The only reason why this surprise worked is because our brother, Spencer, and his wife, Julia, were in Vegas
At the
for,
same time.
yeah, I don't know
I
what they were there for,
I don't know either, but
but
they were
it
there.
so happened that they were there while you were having your babies.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, this is perfect. Let me just text them that I'm coming in, ask if they can pick me up and bring me to the hospital. And they did, all undercover. And
It was impressive.
yeah, I was shocked. We pulled it off. And the thing
You
you
did.
didn't see is when they dropped me off at the hospital, they thought, well, mom thought that they were there to pick her up to go home because it
Yes,
was
because
like
I
9
remember.
p.m.
She had said her good nights and she was gonna go home and sleep at our house.
Yeah, yeah. And she came out and I was in the back seat and she just started crying. I started crying because it's such an emotional day. And we were
Yes.
crying for you basically because
And I was asleep in the hospital bed.
exactly. That's why I said picture this because it's so
Yeah.
good. We ended up going up and surprising you.
Yeah.
I'm crying like hysterically again because I'm like, I'm so happy. You just had babies. You're a mom. You did so
Yeah.
good. And you were like barely awake.
I was like, what is going on right now?
I'm sure you appreciated it the day after,
Yeah.
but
Well, no, even in the moment, I appreciated it.
yeah.
Mhm. No, I was thankful that you were there because I didn't even know if really you had any updates on
Yeah.
what was going on. So
Oh, I
we
was
had
keeping
talked a couple.
tabs. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you made it.
It was special. I wouldn't miss
Yeah.
it for anything.
But as you know, the hard part of having a C-section is that everyone gets to see your babies before you do.
Yes. So, how long were your babies in the NICU for?
So all up, we were in the NICU for 5 weeks.
Did they come home individually or did they all come home together?
They did.
Okay.
So our first one came home at 4 weeks. So James was our first to come home. She was our tiniest.
And she was your first.
She was our first. And it's funny because a
Wow.
lot of the nurses, the NICU nurses predicted that she would go home first.
What a champ.
I know. And that's pretty common, I guess. They're like,
Yeah.
usually the smallest ones are the ones who go home before the other ones.
Hey, that's
I
amazing.
know. But she went home right at the weight limit. So you have to be at
Oh,
least 4 pounds to take your baby home, or the baby
gotcha.
has to be at least 4 pounds to take him home. And she weighed 4 pounds the
Wow.
day we took her home.
That's tiny.
I know.
But so happy that she was able
Yeah,
to come home too.
I know. When my babies were in the NICU for those 4 and 5 weeks, it was so hard to have them there. And especially when So when we were having other friends or family members delivering around the same time and
Mhm.
they were bringing their babies home, that was probably the hardest part.
'Cause you're like, "Why can't that be me?
Yeah. Right.
Why didn't I get this type of outcome?"
Exactly.
You know?
Without being so grateful
Right.
for them being there, it was just really hard to see other people have the experience that I did not.
Well, like we said, being a NICU mom is so hard just
It
because
is.
you're going back and forth from the hospital multiple times a day. You see
Mhm.
your baby struggle when
Right.
you just want to do everything and anything you can for them, which you
Exactly.
can't. Like, there's nothing you can do. And
Yeah.
so I feel like it is so hard to see other moms be able to cuddle their babies right after they deliver.
Yes. Yeah, and it's just there's so many emotions that go into it, and I feel like in the moment, you're just surviving.
Right.
So, you don't really notice all the emotions or deal with the emotions until afterwards,
Yeah.
and so I feel like the year after they were born was kind of when at least I noticed them or dealt
Yeah.
with them.
Probably were dealing with those feelings and emotions well after they had come
Yeah,
home or like the moment it was happening,
right. Yeah, exactly.
which is very normal.
Yeah.
Okay, so James came home at 4 pounds. Who was next?
And then Polly, she came
Okay.
home a few days afterwards, and I really liked that they came home one at a time.
Really?
It was like we were dipping our toes in the water with
Yeah,
one at a time. So when James came home, I think because we prepared to have three at a time, we
right.
were like, this is so easy.
We just have one diaper to change, one mouth
Yes.
to feed.
No. Like we thought we had it handled. But that first night with James is kind of scary
Yeah,
because there are no monitors to
yeah.
tell you if their oxygen's low or their heart rate's low.
Totally.
So I feel like we watched her in the monitor for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys probably didn't get a lot of sleep,
Yeah.
but
No, it was fun to have her home.
yeah.
And then Polly came home a few days later.
Okay.
Dane actually had to go back for training
Oh,
for that
really?
one. Mhm.
Okay.
So the first night with Polly home, he was not there,
So you
which
were
was
doing
fine.
it by yourself?
I was. I had a friend who came over who actually stayed the night with us, which was so
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
I was driving to pick Polly up and I think she called me and she was like, "You're gonna do this by yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah, what
I
else
mean,
am I gonna
I've
do?"
been preparing to do this for the
Yeah.
past 9 months.
I know. It's just 2.
Yeah.
But no, she was great. She had I think her baby was like 10 months old, so she came over and stayed in our guest room and helped us out.
That's so
I
cute.
know. So, yeah, that was fine, and
Yeah.
I felt okay, like, they left the next morning, and I it was just me and the girls, and it was fun.
That's so cute.
Yeah, and then a few days after that, Baz came home at 5 weeks.
Okay.
Mhm.
From James to Baskin, there is a week in between.
Yes.
Okay. Until
Yep.
everyone was reunited again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, that's not too long. Like, I'm
No.
sure it felt like an eternity,
Mhm.
but to have all of them home within a week of each other is pretty great.
No, that's amazing, and honestly, our NICU experience was even though it was a little long, they were feeders and growers the whole time. Like
That's
I said, no
awesome.
life-saving,
Yeah.
treatments were needed, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So, yeah, that kinda sums it
Wow.
all up.
That's a lot.
It is.
How do you feel 2 years after? Like, do you feel
I
like it
feel
was a
good.
lifetime ago? How does your body feel? Like, do you feel fully recovered?
I feel like it was a lifetime ago, but also that it was yesterday.
Right.
It's
That makes
it's
sense.
weird. I know people say the days are long and the years are short, and you
Yeah.
literally don't believe it until
You
like it
have
was my
kids.
3rd Mother's Day.
Oh my gosh. How has it
I
been
know.
3?
I know. I cannot believe it.
Wow.
So, yeah, I feel good. My body, I feel like I'm fully recovered.
Yeah.
And studies have shown it takes anywhere from I think they say average is 2 years for you to fully recover from postpartum.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you
Mhm.
look great.
Thank you.
You're the best you have.
No, I feel great, and I feel I don't know, I feel almost even better than pre-kids.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, you should, because you have three beautiful babies now.
I know.
You have a healthy family.
Yes.
Like, you're thriving.
I am thriving.
I know you have.
It will get there. I feel like I did not feel this way, especially like last year, even up until 18 months. It's all a blur.
Yeah. Just
So
in the thick of it.
it is.
It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely, especially when you're just surviving.
Yeah. But there's hope. I text you with questions all the time about like my C-section scar, or how do I do this? I'm wearing a binder still for like a month, and I'm probably gonna wear it for the next 2. Like,
do it.
And yeah, I feel like you have just been a rock star through it all.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. This has been a fun one.
I know. I am so happy we were able to recall the experience of your birth.
I know. It's fun to look back on. I feel like on the kids' birthdays and Mother's Day, I get sentimental about.
I know.
Their delivery.
It's special having this episode right around Mother's Day.
I know. I loved it.
Yeah. This wraps up this episode. It's been fun.
Yeah. Sorry if I rambled on.
No, I wanted to hear more, honestly. I'm sure we probably could have talked for another hour, but
yeah, definitely. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our channel.
And tell us what you want to hear next week or in the future episodes, because
now that we kind of have our birth stories out of the way and we're kind of caught up on life.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to hear?
Yeah, hopefully we can have some really cool guests on, do some special episodes like that. But for now, we'll just talk about all things motherhood and kind of keep you updated with what's going on in our lives.
There you go.
And there's a reason why this is the best part of the day.
Bye.
Love ya.
Love you too.